Morning. Morning. I'd like to welcome you this morning to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Augusta. We're here as a spiritual community to support each other and to create a spiritual family that acts together with compassion and reason and respect, empowering us to create and to promote a just society now and in the future. So here in the CSRA, we are residing on the lands of the Westco people, the Savannah Shawnees, the Yuchi peoples of the Muskogee Confederacy. We acknowledge that. My name is Chris Garcia. My pronouns are he, and him, and hey you. And I'll be co-creating the service today with Josef Patchen, our music director. The talented and dedicated folks running our tech deck and microphones, and all of you who are here to share and create this atmosphere and service together.
And I'm Reverend Nic Filzen. I'm so happy to be here with you this morning. My pronouns are he, him as well. I'd like to just say hello to our brand new, as of this morning, tech deck coordinator, Natalie Franz. As we start anew once again with a new community here and abroad, I share these words by the Reverend Dr. Mark Morrison Reed. The religious community is essential, for alone our vision is too narrow to see all that must be seen, and our strength too limited to do all that must be done. Together, our vision widens and our strength renews.
Would you rise in body or spirit for our opening hymn, number 193, Our Faith is But a Single Gem.
This is the time in our service every week when we come together to share those joys and sorrows that have come into our lives this last week. I'm Jan Parsons, she, her, representing Pastoral Care Team. We do have an email. You'll find that on the screen, and you'll
It's the time in our service when we take a moment for our prayer and meditation. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Chris Garcia. I identify as a Christian mystic. That's a particular kind of Christian. There is such a thing. And it's maybe different from some of the memories that you may have grown up with Christianity. In the spirit of pluralism, which is our theme this month, I always have an interest in the meditation and contemplative methods of belief systems from around the world, as well as Christianity. This morning, I want to introduce you to a very simple but very profound form of meditation that comes from Japanese Buddhism. This is called Naikan. If you look it up on Google, you will find a lot of stuff on this particular kind of self-reflection. It's spelled Naikan, Naikan. Naikan is really a form of self-reflection. It's similar in some ways to gratitude meditation, but I like it better because it's not asking you to conjure up a feeling or emotion that you might not be feeling at this time in your life. Naikan meditation asks 3 questions, and these questions are non-dualistic. In other words, we're not asking for positive or negative things. We're just asking for what is. We all live on the same planet, but we don't all live in the same world. So in this form of self-reflection, consider the world that you live in, the way that you experience the world, and try to see it clearly. 3 questions, and we'll meditate on these 3 questions in a moment. The first question, Naikan meditation. What have you received? What have you received? And again, this is a non-dualistic question. It's not like, what are you grateful for or whatever. It's just like the world that you experience, what has it given you? The Japanese have a word, nagakai-sama. Nagakai-sama means like a shadow teacher or a shadow lord. It's somebody who maybe in your distant past or even now had a good impact on you. Maybe your first great teacher, or it may have been a beloved pet. What have you received from the world that you live in? Second question, what have you given? What have you given to the world that you experience? Good or bad, non-judgmental, what have you given? The third question, what have you done? That's a more difficult question. How have you impacted or influenced the world and the people in that world that you experience? All right? So, we begin now. We'll take a moment to consider the question, what have you given? Take a moment to consider that question. In your world, as it is, what have you given? Now consider the question, what have you received from this world that you live in? What have you received? Last question. Consider this question, and Josef will mind the time for us. What have you done in this world that you live in? Yes. Well, those of you who've been here before, you know what comes next. This is the time where we ask for money. We've been coming up kind of short in the plate. You look around you, and these are people that you know. These are your children who are coming here and getting a good moral education without a lot of religious baloney that many of us are refugees from. So we want to ask you to please step up and give what you can to help us move along in the projects that we all believe in together. Will the ushers, if any, please come forward. generosity, we thank you.
I want to create a money jar or jug maybe, or maybe even a bucket for my UU ministerial colleagues and I to share. Each of us would put a nickel in every time an organizer of some public event calls one of us to speak or give a blessing or a prayer, some kind of spoken message which dips its toe into the religious realm with an inclusive touch. This bucket, which I think would soon require maybe a dumpster or two, would fill up quickly. With the accumulated treasure, we might even get rich. A novel idea for ordained clergy. Because of our innate and somewhat unique ability to speak in theological tongues, as it were, UU ministers are often the first call for these kinds of events. It's also why we make excellent chaplains. We hone the skill through years of training to communicate in many different religious languages on the fly and somewhat simultaneously. We're like the Lieutenant Uhura of religious leaders. Unitarian Universalist ministers seldom need a Star Trek-inspired universal translator for religious communication, and if we do, we know exactly where to look and have the relationships to know who to ask. We get these requests a lot because we've exercised a genuine capacity to sincerely meet people where they are, spiritually and emotionally. And quite frankly, we do so more competently and compassionately than religious leaders from other traditions. And that's because pluralism has long been an integral, elemental Unitarian Universalist value. It's part of what makes us us. Pluralism is the celebration of different cultures, belief systems, and/or identities, often as a fundamental path toward shared goals and values. With a sense of freedom, pluralists can relish our own experience of the divine while simultaneously honor diversity, affirm multiculturalism, oppose oppression, and hopefully learn from each other as we do at least a little bit of good. Now, with that freedom, we don't mandate what to believe about God or that there is a God. We don't mandate how to feel or imagine the afterlife. We don't mandate any single path to discern truth or even what truth is, though a few sources and methods are emphasized and prioritized here. In fact, we encourage heretical curiosity about these topics. That said, we do have an expectation about shared values, and we promise to maintain integrity within those values. And this is what differentiates pluralism from relativism. Relativism is essentially absolute subjectivity of truth and morality. Pluralism is essentially about social relations, how people with difference share the same space. Relativism denies objectivity, while pluralism doesn't necessarily. As pluralists, a Unitarian Universalist beliefs, rituals, behaviors must be reconciled with our shared values. Our values don't necessarily need to be reconciled the other way with our beliefs. Most plainly, it's the promises we make based on our shared values which define us, ground us, keep us together, and maintain our boundaries, despite our inherent and beautiful spectrum of spiritual perspective. But I'll get back to those boundaries in a moment. Here's the history lesson portion of the sermon. Pluralism has long been integrated into the way we do faith and how we live faithfully, including through a groundbreaking document called the Edict of Torda. The Edict of Torda was a royal religious decree authored in 1568 by Francis David, the court preacher for Transylvanian King Sigismund. Both Sigismund and David were Unitarian. According to Reverend Susan Ritchie,
historians have praised the edict as an outstanding early example of religious toleration in that it grants freedom of practice to 4 churches in the country: Lutheran, Calvinist, Catholic, and Unitarian, rather than a single religion of state.
this was monumental in 1568. Now, though there's some question about authenticity, David is also often credited with one of my favorite descriptive quotes about Unitarian Universalism.
Y'all know this one. We do not need to think alike in order to love alike.
Our ancestors' deeply seated penchant for pluralism continued to weave its way through both Unitarian and Universalist history. The Universalist Winchester profession from 1803 ended with these words:
And while we consider that every church possesses within itself all the powers of self-government, we earnestly and affectionately recommend it to every church, society, or particular association to exercise the spirit of Christian meekness and charity towards those who have different modes of faith or practice, that where the brethren cannot see alike, they may agree to differ, and let every man be fully persuaded in his or her own mind.
The things most commonly believed today among us from the 1887 Western Unitarian Conference included these 2 gems.
1, we honor the Bible and all inspiring scripture, old and new. We revere Jesus and all holy souls that have taught men the truth and righteousness and love as prophets of religion.
1936, Unitarians agreed to disagree
as to the wisdom of maintaining the definitely Christian tradition and the traditional forms of Christian worship, and as to the religious values of a purely naturalistic philosophy.
Shared philosophy wasn't the connective fabric. Shared values, as now, were. When Unitarians and Universalists merged in 1961, the new collective we, became a truly pluralistic association of congregations by default, because of the differing baseline Christian theologies entering institutional relationship. The youth of both figured out how to do pluralism 8 years earlier, when they merged in 1953. Plus, humanism had become so prevalent among Unitarians that there were suddenly 3 different major theological belief systems under one religious umbrella. For clarity, theology is not just about God. Theology is the exploration and understanding of that which is most intimate and most ultimate in the universe. Theology is a systematic consideration of what ultimate human concern deserves our loyalty, our faith. But I digress. The newly united members of the 1961 Unitarian Universalist Association, dedicated to the principles of a free faith, united in seeking
to strengthen one another in a free and disciplined search for truth, to cherish and spread the universal truths taught by the great prophets and teachers of humanity in every age and tradition, immemorably summarized in the Judeo-Christian heritage as love to God and love to man.
pluralism connected through the work of love. We promise in our current 4th principle from 1985 to affirm and promote a free and responsible search for truth and meaning. Now, this is work that is essential to religious life. And this is, in essence, a promise to celebrate and practice pluralism. We are all free to search and discover truth and meaning through our own particular theological windows. And yet, in our zeal for an individualistic notion of freedom, we often overlook an important word in that phrase: responsible. A responsible search means our search for truth doesn't outweigh life, doesn't outweigh relationship with other life, and if we do harm, we hold each other accountable. A responsible search means we make a good faith effort to avoid misappropriation, cherry picking elements from marginalized cultures that aren't ours. A responsible search means it's incumbent on us to recognize the inequitable culture waters in which we are all swimming. Accordingly, we have also promised in our own church covenant here to
expand our awareness of power and privilege, centering on those who are most burdened by injustice.
Our search for truth and meaning is often irresponsible. We don't do this promise great, or even well sometimes, and haven't for a while. For example, in the UUA Commission on Appraisal report from 2005, it was recommended that we
take steps at all levels to ensure congregations are theologically safe spaces.
We still have work to do on this goal, especially in the way we sometimes treat members and potential members who retain a Christian or pagan orientation or identity in some kind of way. In addition to overlooking that all-important responsibility, we also often omit the closing statement of our current 1985 UUA covenant when we only refer to the 7 principles.
That closing statement is grateful for the religious pluralism which enriches and ennobles our faith. We are inspired to deepen our understanding and expand our vision as free congregations. We enter into this covenant promising to one another our mutual trust and support.
Anybody even know that that existed in part of our UUA covenant?
No.
Maybe a couple hands. We focus in on the 7 principles, but there's more. Now, I promised earlier that I'd return to what keeps us together, to what provides the boundaries of Unitarian Universalism, even while we affirm varying beliefs, and that is the promises that we make to uphold our shared values. Let me be super clear. Pluralism does not mean we can believe whatever we want here about everything. All people are welcome here. All of who you are is welcome here, especially if you're a member of a target identity group. All values are not, and certainly not all behaviors. Though we do not have a creedal test to be a Unitarian Universalist or a member of this church, we do have an inclusivity policy in our bylaws, which add a good faith constraint for our community, expanding on our covenantal promise to privilege marginalized voices, and mirroring the proposed inclusivity clause for the UUA bylaws. Our bylaws state,
this is important, systems of power, privilege, and oppression have traditionally created barriers for peoples and groups with particular identities, ages, abilities, and histories. We pledge to replace such barriers with ever-widening circles of solidarity and mutual respect. We strive to be a church that truly welcomes all persons who share our values. We commit to being a congregation that empowers and enhances everyone's participation, especially those who have historically marginalized identities.
yes, indeed, we do have shared values here, centered by, through, and around transformative love. If you're not actively dismantling racism and other oppressions in yourself and the world, this place may not be the place for you. If you think some humans are illegal, this place may not be the place for you. If you deny bodily autonomy to folks who can give birth, this may not be the place for you. If you deny humans have caused climate change and also have the capacity to slow it down and even reverse it, this may not be the place for you. If you're not down with celebrating the full spectrum of gender and sexual identities, this may not be the place for you. If you refuse to intentionally make our church community and the world a just, equitable, inclusive space, this may not be the place for you. If you're dismissive, patronizing, or outright hostile to folks with other belief systems, especially if they otherwise share the same values, this might not be the place for you. And if you can't commit to the top line promise in our church covenant to
love and affirm each other and our planet, celebrating multicultural, independent, interdependent wholeness,
or when any one of us inevitably makes a mistake, at least be willing to
embrace mutual accountability for our impact, making amends and returning to love.
If you're not willing to do those things, this is not the place for you. Now, knowing some of our developing edges, some of our challenges, some of our boundaries, how do we move forward? How do we increase our capacity to practice our pluralistic faith lovingly and responsibly? How is pluralism a gift, as our monthly theme suggests? Well, we'll start by discussing how pluralism has been and is practiced within our living faith and adult faith formation following the service. So I invite you to come along with me. If you're under 18, you'll go hang out with Desiree and some of her volunteers. Also, over the next 2 weeks, we'll have several church members share how their beliefs and particular theological orientations intersect with their Unitarian Universalist faith, to move this reflection from the abstract to the more personal and relational. I encourage you to come the next couple weeks for that. Until then, I believe that a little clarity may exist in the proposal to update and revise the UUA covenant. The last one with which we're currently working is from 1985. This version includes a newly articulated pluralism value and reinforcing covenant. The proposed text is pluralism.
We celebrate that we are all sacred beings, diverse in culture, experience, and theology. We covenant to learn from one another in our free and responsible search for truth and meaning. We embrace our differences and commonalities with love, curiosity, and respect.
In short, I love this language. I really love it. I love the more direct covenant. I love that pluralism is being included within the core values, so it isn't forgotten as often as it is now, though, as I said earlier, it is indeed already included in the UUA covenant. I love how explicitly is named that we learn from one another in our interdependent, responsible search, our free and responsible search. That chance to learn and grow together, to practice pluralism together, is such a gift. It is a gift to do pluralism religiously, to bind and rebind together with folks who may name and experience and imagine spirit, God, the afterlife differently than us, yet with whom we share a purpose, a mission. It is a gift to do Unitarian Universalism, to create beloved community with you. Blessed be.
Would you rise in body or spirit for our closing hymn, number 147, When All the Peoples on This Earth, verses 1 and 2.
may remain risen if you already are in body or spirit, as I share these closing words by Teresa Youngblood entitled Arms Outstretched Singing. May you be invited to the party. May you be asked to dance. May you be amazed to learn that your own precious heart already knows and leaps to the song. And in this moment, whirling in the expansive affirmation of all creation, an embodiment of the divine's boundless love, may you turn and face the door, arms outstretched, to sing in wide welcome the ever-changing song of togetherness to those who have yet to discover that they too belong here. Blessed be.